WWF hires Chris and Tammy in the spring of 1995. The original character for Chris was Mighty Mouse because he was like 5'8". And Vince McMahon in the mid-90s was, to him, disgustingly short. That, like, how dare someone even 5'8" get on, on TV? He had Owen Hart, and that was like the shortest person on the roster. Where am I looking? After being the fitness guru for a few months, that was his character, and then he did the thing with Barry Horowitz. Chris is then put into a tag team with Dr. Tom Pritchard, who was rechristened Zip, and he had his hair buzzed, which he really hated, and dyed blonde. Anyway, do you know what? Let's talk about Dr. Tom and having to shave his head. Did he ever talk to you about this and just how gutted he was he had to?
No, but he was physically, he was just beside himself. He hated it. He didn't hide it. Tom was always kind of proud of his hair, and he'd fluff it out and all the time. And so for him to cut his hair for a job, and he didn't even like who he was working with. He didn't really care for that. So he just got him a spot on the card. That's all he wanted anyway. I'm sure that he would have wanted a much higher spot, but he didn't get it. And I think Tom did tell me, I heard him do an interview, said it was the most disgusting part of his wrestling career. It was horrible. His most horrible time he's ever had in the wrestling business.
Why did Tom and Tammy not get along?
Because Tammy's a bitch. Exactly.
Fair
Man,
enough.
Tom, well, Tom.
Oh, yeah.
Tom's laid back and whatever. Easy to get along with, He wouldn't say boo to a goose. Is that the word you used?
It was, yeah.
He wouldn't say boo to a goose. And Tom, I've never met anybody who didn't like Tom, because there's nothing to get upset about. If you was going down the road and you said, "Hey, you mind if I do this and smoke some crack?" No, man, go ahead. And the guy could be driving. Oh, go ahead, Or what about this? Oh, and yeah, go ahead. Hey, I'm gonna stop down at the 7-Eleven, rob it. You mind? No, go ahead, man. But he didn't. He was very agreeable to most everything. Hey, let's stop and eat. Okay, let's go. It's whatever you wanted to do. He was never assertive, and he may have wanted to eat other places, but he didn't really care. But Tammy is a bitch in her own right, and after she got a little bit ingrained into her role in WWE. Now, what ruined Tammy in WWE was Vince himself. He loved her. And he would take, I could see him out there one day, and I never saw Vince on the floor with anybody, but he was out there personally managing her, where she had to come down the ramp and where the camera was going to be and where she was going to be and what she had to do here and here. He personally managed that. And he kept that up for a couple of weeks, and they was going with her and, the Body Donnas and, Chris and Tom and her. But it went to her head because she began to think that she was more important than what she really was. So as we've seen where that has gotten her, of course, the last time we heard about Tammy was she hit that guy in the rear and killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she should go to jail for that, because you just can't kill a guy and get off. She's had like 7 suspensions of her license, but that's neither here nor there now. That's coming up.
Well, let me ask you this then. As you say, Timmy, God, me and my names today. Tammy Sytch becomes a nightmare to deal with. The whole WWF stardom thing goes to a head, and she's still very, very young in the business, of course. So she's in her early 20s, still not dealing with fame maybe as well as she could have done. But just to like the wrestler in the locker room or just people in general, how did she change? Did she behave differently towards them, or did she just start ignoring people and thinking she was too good for them, or how did that manifest?
I think what I call high-hatted people. She did the hi-hat like I don't want to talk to you if you're too low, and I think a lot of people backstage it's its own universe kind of to speak because that's your world. It's very small. It was then, not as big as it is now. But people caught on to that, especially the other girls in WWF. They caught on it too real quick. And the girls did not like her. She did not like them because you see that with a lot of girls anyway. I mean, that's their natural habitat. But the girls in WWE, they didn't much appreciate it. And there were some of them that couldn't stand her, some of them that tolerated her. And I don't know, I don't think she had any friends backstage at WWE. Not that I heard, not that I saw. Maybe that hairdresser, that Tammy, what's her name? I mean, that Terry Boulder, Terry who?
The hairdresser?
Yeah, Dustin married her.
Terry Runnels.
Terry Runnels. She may have been a little bit of a friend, but only when she was doing her hair, kind of to speak. But no, she didn't have any any allies other than Vince. Even the agents didn't like to deal with her because Vince had a vested interest in her well-being, her getting over. So when you took an agent over there to Tammy, if she suggested something which she was not qualified to do, the agent, because he was fearing that she may go back to Vince and put in a Yelp review on him in person. So they would let her get by with it. So
there's a very famous incident. It had only become famous years after the fact, of course. That one, I think this is the Body Donners and Sonny, and they're feuding or arguing or battling with the Godwins. Now, the Godwins at the time were very famous for carrying around a slop bucket. And one day, Henry, do you know the story? Were you there? You might as well tell the entire story if you know it.
Well, they were going to slop her with their slop bucket because that would be the most humiliating thing they could do to Tammy or to anybody in that regard, to hit you with a slop bucket. Can you imagine what's in a slop bucket? Anything. So the story was, I think Henry, they had a slop bucket over in the corner, and he says, guys, I'm going to dump this on Tammy's head out there, so nobody put nothing in it that shouldn't be there, okay? Well, you can imagine what went in there. So, and then he went out there and dumped it on her. I don't think she knew it. I think somebody may have told her later. But, and that's sometimes it, guys that do that to people, you know, I would never do something like that to anybody. First of all, I don't have the guts to do it. And I don't think it's not the right thing to do. I don't think, but they did it anyway.
So you weren't in line. You weren't in line to contribute to the slop bucket's contents this day. Was it like a Superstars taping or something? I think.
Well, I don't know what taping it was, but I was there and I remember it. But I didn't hear that part of it till later because it was just a slop bucket to me. I mean, how much can you imagine that was in a slop bucket anyway? That could be any worse than what's already in it.
Let me tell you, right? So, when Henry Godwin would do the, on a bad guy, whether he was a bad guy or a good guy, because he switched about, dump the bucket on somebody that I presume he liked. When the contents would sort of drop, like from the bucket, from their head, it'd be like apple peel, bit of paper, something really innocuous. When the slop bucket's dumped on Sonny, it's like porridge mixed with piss. It's It's so gross. It's way worse than every other one. If you see some other sloppings, then you can tell the difference.
You're gonna have to put up a censor on this. You really are,
like with Kenny Bolan.
Yeah, some of the content is not usable, not safe for work. You got to put this up there, and it's not because we're cussing or doing anything, but we have to. I think you should warn the people that are gonna listen to this what they might be hearing.
Warning, like a story about like a big bucket of piss porridge.
Well, listen, if I'm listening to a podcast and somebody warns me, hey, now some of this may be objectionable to certain fans, be warned. Mm-hmm. Well, you warned me.
We did that. We did that for Kenny Bolan, you know, and Kenny on his channel. He stole exactly my line. Say stole, but he paid tribute to exactly my line, because when I said, "Warning: this podcast contains a dangerous amount of Kenny Bolan," and then naughty words, whatever, and then for a video that he did in response to a story that Damien Sandow said on our, the funeral story, when he went to the funeral, and Kenny Bolan said, "Whoa, hang on, that's not exactly what happened," and then Kenny retells the story almost verbatim what Damien Sandow said as well.
Well, I actually thought I had it in my head that he came up with it, but we did it here. Because I think this podcast is kind of known that we don't cuss a lot, I mean, I couldn't be like Cornette. I mean, that takes a lot of energy to say a cuss word every 5 words. And that's not him going full tilt boogie either.
Special occasions, we do some swearing, I think.
Oh, yeah.
You wanted to make mention, I think this sort of goes well with the rest of what we're talking about, Tammy, at this point. The European tour on the bus. Now, I'm sort of going to give away the punchline here, because we have covered it to a point before where someone leaves a little old stinky pickle in Sonny's lunch, and then they find it. Anyway, that's sort of like the punchline, but what had she done to draw the ire of whoever it was for it to end up in that conclusion?
The backstory.
The backstory on the bus. It was 95 and 96.
No, I think it was, you're right. It was 95, 96. Yes, it was. What had been going on is Tammy and Chris were both politicking to join the Clique. And the Clique being Nash and Hall and 1-2-3 Kid and Triple H and, Shawn Michaels, and they wanted to be accepted amongst those types. So we got on the bus, and the bus was segregated because the Clique sat in the back of the bus in their little space, and what separated us was like a toilet, like a middle of the bus. You could get up and go to the restroom, and then we would sit in kind of the front of the bus. The renegades, we weren't accepted with the Clique in the back, and I didn't want to go back there anyway. And I was up there with Bradshaw and Savio. Kane was up there. Al Snow was up there. So a bunch of us that they didn't want back there was up with us, plus Tammy and Chris. And it was common knowledge that they were trying to work their way to the back. And it was about a 3-week run. So about the first week went by, and every now and then we'd see Tammy go to the back and she'd come back. Okay. And finally one day we got on there. It's about the second week. And we got on there one day, and Tammy and Chris went right to the back. So that signified to us, me and Bradshaw and Savio and Kane, Al Snow, we were the rejects. But it signified to us that finally they have been accepted into the clique, which was actually, politically speaking, a big jump for them. Because now they're right in there with Vince, and Vince liked them. And that lasted about 2 days. Because the next day was okay. I think the next day was okay. But when we got on the bus to go on the third day after they joined, apparently something had happened that had upset the balance of the clique. Mm. And we've just talked about that. It was the little pickle that was in Tammy's food. And she went back and she looked in her food and she saw that little pickle that shouldn't have been there. And I think the people know what the pickle is that I'm talking about. And she got on the phone to Lisa, what was her name you said?
Wolf.
Lisa Wolf. And she was raising hell because this actually, could be a legal issue with WWE. And if she wanted it to be, so Lisa Wolf was trying to tone that down. And Tammy left that day. As soon as they found it, and she found it at about probably 12 o'clock at night. And she called the States at 12 o'clock, which was about, I guess, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning in Stanford time. And they had her on a plane about 7 o'clock the next morning out of London, I guess. And she flew back. And, when I'm thinking about this, somebody says, oh, a lot of people didn't like it because it is gross. I mean, it's terribly gross. And it is actually kind of embarrassing for me to be a member of the wrestling fraternity. And we had grown men that's making $1 million, $2 million a year. And they're acting like 16-year-old kids in a backyard party. And I'm thinking, damn, it was embarrassing to me to know that goes on. This was where Vince should have kind of cracked down on it, but he didn't. He didn't crack down on it at all. And when nothing was said, nothing was done, that told the clique that, they had full clearance now to do whatever they wanted to do. And it could be Vince wouldn't care. Vince didn't care until they did the group hug.
Mm-hmm. And then they were going anyway.
And they were going anyway. And that pissed off Vince because he couldn't do anything to Hall and Nash because they were already going. Couldn't do anything to Shawn because he was a champion. The only ones he could do anything to was Triple H. And he punished him for 6 months, especially with Jake and that snake. But I will say one thing with Triple H. He never bitched about it, never said one word about it. He went and he did everything that was asked of him. When he was laying there one night and that big snake was slithering across him, I said, F this. I don't give a shit what I'd done. I'm getting out of that ring. That's cruel and inhumane punishment. I think the Supreme Court would back you up on that.
Oh, no, you need to have a snake on you. You need to hold a snake. It's good for the soul.
Oh, my God. I hate snakes.
I know you hate snakes. We'll move off the snake thing.